Today, footage shared from the front lines shows aerial scouts from the 71st Separate Hunting Brigade of the Ukrainian Airborne Assault Forces reported via Telegram the destruction of a large concentration of Russian troops using FPV drones. Russian soldiers tried to hide from Ukrainian drones in a house and then escape in a car, but the ruthless drones caught up with them. The enemy infantry tried to hide, but in the end they were buried in the Ukrainian land. According to the report, paratroopers spotted a large concentration of enemy personnel moving from the forest plantation to a house in the temporarily occupied territory. Several FPV strikes forced them to run to another house, but they were also caught there by kamikaze drones, the report said. The footage shows UAV operators methodically targeting the Russians with kamikaze attack drones and recording all the movements of the enemy as they tried to escape from the firing zone, hide in abandoned buildings, and also flee the battlefield in vehicles. The video concluded with several Russian soldiers attempting to escape in a car, but it showed a kamikaze drone targeting their vehicle, but they were also overtaken by ruthless drones of paratrooper hunters, the report stated. FPV drones, capable of dropping explosives, are being used as one-off kamikaze drones, are wreaking havoc on the battlefield. Recently, a Russian soldier pleaded on social media to pump shotguns to help stop the Ukrainian drones with saying, "They're simply burning through us." On the other hand, up to 90% of wounded Russian soldiers treated at stabilization points have been hit by an FPV drone or explosives dropped by a drone. Special Operations Forces often report the destruction of enemy manpower concentrations with FPV drones. For instance, Special Ops reported the elimination of more than a dozen Russian soldiers during a successful mission. Meanwhile, Russian propagandist and military blogger Alexander Kotz has published a video on Moscow's current offensive into Ukraine's northeastern Kharkiv region, suggesting high troop losses have been sustained so far. Fierce clashes have been ongoing after the Kremlin's forces kick-started an offensive in the Kharkiv region on May 10th, seizing a number of villages on Ukraine's northeastern frontier and forcing thousands of civilians to flee. Weighing in on the offensive, Russian military blogger Kotz, who serves on the Kremlin's Human Rights Council, said in a video published Wednesday that the battle for the region should be given the label meat grinder. The term describes prolonged battles, racked up high casualty counts, and the loss of significant resources. As for how things are going in the Kharkiv direction, the enemy is trying to attack in Lipsy, near Haliboke, and in Vovichvansk. Here there will be no such serious advances in the future. As I have already said, the operation, Ukrainian Meat Grinder, is underway here now, said Kotz. Unfortunately, the enemy has begun to use American precision weapons on Belgorod, HIMARS in particular. This is war. The enemy is serious. He is evolving and it can't be avoided. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Russian losses during its Kharkiv offensive were 8 times higher than Ukraine's, while Zelensky also said on June 8 that Russia had failed in its Kharkiv region offensive. A very significant result is that the Russian army failed. The direction is strengthened, and it will be strengthened more, Zelensky said after a meeting with Ukraine's army chief, Alexander Syrsky, in front lines. The Institute for the Study of War, ISW, an independent US-based think tank, said in its latest analysis of the conflict in Ukraine that fighting continued in northern Kharkiv region on Wednesday, but there were no confirmed changes to the front line. Ukrainian Kharkiv Group of Forces spokesperson Colonel Yuri Pavik and Ukrainian Kharkiv Oblast head Oleh Synihabov noted that Ukrainian forces continue to block a small group of Russian troops in the Vovchansk aggregate plant amid continued reports of heavy close combat fighting within Vovchansk, northeast of Kharkiv city, the think tank said. The ISW also added, Russian and Ukrainian forces reported fighting in around Vovchansk, east of Vovchansk near Tychy, and near Haliboke, north of Kharkiv city, on June 25 and 26. While Russia has sustained high losses of tanks since President Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine more than 2 years ago, and may have just a few thousand of the armored fighting vehicles left, artificial intelligence, AI, analysis of satellite imagery suggests. German newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung, SZ, trained an AI model to examine satellite imagery of 87 Russian military sites, including 16 bases where tanks, artillery vehicles, and armored personnel carriers are stored. They counted the number of tanks at these key sites prior to the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 to determine the scale of the country's tank losses in the war. One of these bases, the 111th Central Tank Reserve Base of the Army in southeastern Russia, which housed 857 tanks in April 2021, is now nearly empty. Satellite imagery suggests. Just months into the war, in October 2022, Russia had lost nearly half of these tanks, but analysis of other military sites painted also a similar picture, SZ said. Michael Gierstedt is a research analyst for defense and military analysis at the London-based International Institute for Strategic Studies, IISS, and he told SZ that he estimates Russia still has around 3,200 tanks in stock. But the vast majority of them are in a bad condition and require significant repairs, according to publicly available data. On Thursday, Kyiv's military said Moscow had lost 8,042 tanks since Russia launched its full-scale invasion, including 3 in the past 24 hours. The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces posts figures on Russia's troop and equipment losses as part of its daily update on the war. Gustav Gressel, a senior policy fellow with the international think tank European Council on Foreign Relations, told SZ he is certain that Russia is losing far more equipment than it can replace, and stocks are running out. It is therefore important for Ukraine to inflict such high material losses on the Russians that things will become critical for them at some point.